Welcome to the JLG Group H-1B webinar. We'll be discussing the new H-1B registration process. I'm Matthew Kolajay. I'm the Business Immigration Partner for JLG Group. And I'll be explaining how to apply for an H-1B visa this year. An H-1B visa is probably the most common work visa that U.S. employers use to hire specialized workers that have bachelor's degrees that qualify them for professional jobs in the U.S. An H-1B visa is a guest worker visa for specialized workers that have bachelor's degrees or an equivalent that allows them to work in a specialty occupation that requires a specific degree for the particular job that they're being offered by the U.S. company. And the H-1B is usually limited to 6 years, but it can be extended and it can be transferred to a green card if the employer wishes to sponsor the employee for the green card. Now, an H-1B visa is for specialty occupations, or, as I said earlier, occupations that require specific degrees. For example, one of the most common specialty occupations is the software engineer. A software engineer must have a specific degree in computer science or related degree. Another possibility is a human resource manager. A human resource manager generally requires a degree in human resources, all right, or related field, okay? And I have here on the screen many different options of specialty occupations that may qualify a foreign national to get an H-1B visa. That includes, for example, a graphic designer is a specialty occupation, and the foreign national can qualify for this H-1B if they have a related degree, such as graphic design, or a closely related degree, such as an arts degree, for example. One of the most common specialty occupation jobs is an accountant. An accountant clearly needs a degree in accounting or a closely related degree, and we've done many H-1B visas successfully for accountants, okay? Other options are, possibilities are fashion designers and other types of specialty occupations, all right? We've had a lot of success at JLG, okay, in applying for H-1B visas. We are a specialized law firm that has clients all over the world, especially in Asia, and we've been very successful in helping companies apply for visas for foreign workers that they need to bring to the United States. I have over 15 years of experience helping employers, U.S. workers, investors apply for visas and green cards and help them come to the United States or get work permits or green cards in the United States. We're located in the financial district in New York City, and we also have offices in California and in Beijing. So, in this particular presentation, I'm going to talk about the changes to the H-1B application process this year. As I said, H-1B visas are for specialty occupations. That requires specific degrees. So it's very important to discuss the type of job that you're being offered, okay, and make sure that it qualifies you for the H-1B visa. All right. Now this year we have a very different process. There will be online registration for the H-1B lottery this year. The H-1B visa has an annual cap, okay? And every year, only 85,000 H-1B visas are available. Recently, because the economy is so good, okay, and because the U.S. economy has grown, all right, about twice as many applications are submitted as are available. About twice as many applications are submitted as there are H-1B visas available. Therefore, a lottery is conducted every year, starting on April 1st. Okay. Before, this was done by actually submitting an application, a paper application, and mailing it to USCIS. And USCIS then collected the applications and performed a lottery based on the actual applications that were received. Here, there will be a lottery online. Employers will register their employees online using a registration tool that will be operational from March 1st to March 20th. That is the online registration, okay? Each employer will register the employer or the employee or employees that they want to enter in the lottery. Then, after March 20th, the Immigration Service, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, will conduct the lottery electronically after March 20th. Before April 1st, we should know, okay, which applicants have been selected for the H-1B visa, who have won the H-1B lottery. Then, after April 1st, the employers will be able to file the H-1B petitions, the actual H-1B applications, all right, starting on April 1st. And there will be at least a 90-day period in which the employers can file the H-1B visas, okay? However, many people who have OPT work permits that are expiring should apply as soon as possible because their OPT may be expiring and they want to be eligible for the cap gap. If you have questions about the cap gap, you can let me know, okay? But in most cases, employers will want to file their H-1B petitions as soon as possible after April 1st. Now, recently, under the Trump administration, the Immigration Service has been requesting additional evidence from employers, okay, before they will approve the H-1B petition, okay? We have been receiving long requests for additional evidence. We've received requests for additional evidence about the employer, additional evidence about the job, additional evidence about the employee's qualifications and education. I'll talk about that in a minute, okay? But we've been very successful in responding to those requests and getting the H-1B visas approved. But if you receive a request for evidence, you'll have to submit a response to the request for evidence, or RFE, and then later in the summer, the H-1B will be adjudicated and hopefully approved, hopefully before October 1st, when the H-1B employment can start, okay? Though it does sometimes take longer, unfortunately. So this is the new H-1B process, all right? And this is the new online registration process, which will start on March 1st. So it's very important to be ready for that. Okay, now some petitions are not counted towards the H-1B cap. In other words, some employers can file applications that do not have to be subject to the lottery, okay? There are different kinds. Most of these cap-exempt applications are from employers that are nonprofit research organizations or universities, okay? All right. Other possibilities to avoid the H-1B cap is to be from Singapore or Chile. H-1B visas for Singaporeans and Chileans are separate from the regular cap, and Chileans and Singaporeans can apply for an H-1B at any time, okay? Now, if you've had an H-1B before, okay, a cap subject H-1B before, you also may be eligible to reapply for your H-1B without having to apply for the cap if you did not use all 6 years of your H-1B status the last time you had an H-1B, okay? And then there is a separate cap for master's degrees, U.S. master's degrees for employees who have U.S. master's degrees, okay? But they do have to apply and register for the online lottery just like people with bachelor's degrees do, okay? So they are subject to the cap, but there are additional visas available for employees that have U.S. master's degrees, and they have better, and people who have U.S. master's degrees have a better chance of being selected in the cap lottery. Okay, so what do employers have to provide, and what do employers have to do to qualify to sponsor an H-1B visa? Okay, they must, first of all, they must agree to pay the prevailing wage, okay? And the Trump administration has been scrutinizing applications that use low wages. So we recommend that the employer use at least what's called a level 2 wage, and that they not use a level 1 wage if possible. Okay, now we've gotten many cases approved with level 1 wages, okay? But those cases are usually scrutinized more, okay? So the employer must also submit a petition, of course. They must sign the petition. They also must post a labor condition application at the work site. We help them do that, and we send them the labor condition application for posting. They must also create a public access file that contains information about the compliance with the H-1B program, and of course they must also pay filing fees and so forth. We have a very detailed instruction list for employers that helps them easily collect the information that they need for the H-1B application, and we try to make it as easy for them as possible. Now, each application, of course, has certain application fees. That's important to know. These are government fees. These are not lawyer fees, okay? There is the USCIS I-129 form fee, which is $450, okay? There's also an anti-fraud fee for initial applications, and there's a ACWIA fee that is either $750 or $500 depending on the size of the company. Now, in some cases, the employer can file a premium processing request and pay an extra $1,440 to get the application adjudicated earlier. But in recent years, that premium processing service has not been available. Okay, so here, these are the government filing fees. All right, so as I mentioned before, there is a new process for registering for the online cap lottery, okay? And this is the general process, okay? That hasn't changed, okay? So when we're retained to file an H-1B application, this is what we do. We will send an intake sheet, okay, to the employer and the employee to get the job information, okay, as well as the employee's university degree or degrees and the wage for the job, okay? We fill out a labor condition application that we send to the employer for posting. That labor condition application has information about the job title, about the employer, and about the wage, okay? And the employer has to post that labor condition application at the job location. Then the employer submits the petition to the Immigration Service. We fill out the forms. We draft a letter of support that the employer signs, and we also, of course, draft a support letter that describes why the employer and the employee are eligible for the H-1B visa. Okay, and the employer signs the forms, the LCA, and the letter, and then we file the H-1B petition, hopefully around April 1st or shortly thereafter. Okay, and then USCIS adjudicates the petition. In recent years, it's been taking 3 to 6 months for the H-1B to be approved, it tends to take on the longer side if there is a request for evidence, which has become more frequent. So we expect that this year the whole process will probably take us a similar amount of time as it did in the past. Okay, it may take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, or possibly longer in some cases, for the H-1B petition to be approved. All right. So now, if you are selected in the H-1B lottery, okay, and your employer can file an H-1B petition on your behalf, what are the things that you should be concerned about in order to maximize your chances of approval? Well, there are various trends in H-1B processing that I'll talk about in the next slide. Okay, there's the wage issue. Okay, the Immigration Service doesn't like low wages. Okay, they also want to make sure that the employer has enough money to pay the employee and so forth. And I'll talk about those in the next slide. Other issues that may come up are refiling after an H-1B has been denied previously. Unfortunately, we do see this fairly often. Other attorneys give us cases that have been denied, okay, and we apply again for them. And we do see additional scrutiny when the H-1B, when the applicant has been denied an H-1B earlier, but you certainly can apply again. In fact, you could apply every year, okay? But unfortunately, the H-1B is usually processed under additional scrutiny, okay? Now, if unfortunately you are not selected for the H-1B lottery, then we often have to discuss other other options, okay, which might be another F1 student visa or other options like that, okay. Now, if you are selected for the H-1B visa and are approved and would like to apply for a green card, you can do that immediately. In some cases, you can even apply for a green card before you get the H-1B visa. But just so you know, the green card takes several years at least to get approved, okay? And it takes much longer for certain nationalities like Chinese nationals and Indians, okay? So normally you would have to have some other type of visa in the interim, like an H-1B visa, before you can get your green card. Okay, so what are some of the hot topics, some of the areas that the Immigration Service is scrutinizing these days? Well, as I said before, there's the level 1 wage issue, okay? The Immigration Service does scrutinize cases that use a lower wage, okay? But we've been very successful in getting cases approved even if they use the level 1 wage. But often we receive a request for evidence asking us to prove that the job is a specialty occupation. It's a professional occupation that requires at least a bachelor's degree in a specific area, okay, and it's not an unskilled job because the wage level is lower, okay? All right, another area of scrutiny is specialty occupation. As I said earlier, the Immigration Service wants to see a close relationship between the job and the applicant's education. One of the easiest cases is accountant. If the applicant has an accounting degree, it's very easy to show that in order to be an accountant, the applicant must have an accounting degree, okay? Other cases are more complicated, okay? But we've been very successful, generally speaking, in showing that the applicant for the H-1B visa does have the degree that's required for the position. All right, now the petitioner's qualifications, that is the employer's qualifications. As I said before, the employer is the petitioner. Okay, the employer sponsors the employee for the H-1B visa, and smaller companies receive more scrutiny. Okay, if the employer is a young company, if it's a small company, if the employer doesn't have a lot of revenue, okay, that case is going to be scrutinized more, and we have to discuss the case with the employer ahead of time to make sure that we can show that the employer has enough revenue, has enough clients, and has enough employees to support the H-1B applicant's position at the company. Okay, we've been very successful with this, and that brings us to the next topic: startup companies. We've been successful in getting H-1B visas approved for small companies that have been set up very recently, but it is more difficult. We will often receive a request for evidence, asking for evidence that the company is viable, that the company has clients, that the company has revenue, and is therefore eligible to get an H-1B visa for a professional in their field. All right. Then, of course, there are other issues such as CPT and OPT. The Immigration Service is now scrutinizing whether or not the student has maintained their CPT and OPT employment. Okay, and as you may know, normally a student with OPT cannot be unemployed for 90 days. Okay, and the Immigration Service wants to see evidence that the applicant has maintained their student status and has maintained compliance with the OPT work permit. Okay, so those are some of the things we've seen. We've had a lot of success, however, getting cases approved, even when there was an issue with the OPT employment. Okay, there was ways of getting those cases approved, even if there's been a problem with the OPT employment, and we've had a lot of success with that. So, as you can see, the H-1B visas are getting more complicated. Okay, and there's a new online registration tool, a new online lottery that's going to be conducted, which may make things easier or may make things harder. We're not sure how it's going to work out, but it's important to be ready ahead of time and to discuss the various requirements for the H-1B visa ahead of time and make sure that the lawyer can prepare the strongest case possible if the employee is selected and when the H-1B petition is submitted, hopefully in early April. All right, so this is some of our information, okay, and the contact information for some of our offices. It's been a pleasure talking to you about the H-1B visa process. And I believe we have the opportunity to answer some questions about the H-1B process. All right, so some of the questions we've gotten, all right, about registering multiple times. That's a very good question. Okay, now the same applicant for an H-1B cannot register more than once with the same employer. Okay, that is very important. Okay, so one employer can only register an employee once. Now that doesn't mean the employee can't get multiple job offers. An employee can get multiple job offers and be sponsored by more than one employer. That is possible. Okay. Now, what are the risks of that? Well, if more than one employer registers the employee for the lottery, okay, and if the employee is selected both times, then the employee may have to choose. Okay, now an employer, if they register for the lottery, has the intention to file a petition for that employee, okay? And an employer should not register the employee if they don't intend to file a petition, okay? So it's important to register for the lottery with employers that have a bona fide intention to sponsor the employee for the job and intend to file an H-1B petition, okay? Because if an employer registers employees for the lottery and then doesn't file a petition when they're selected, the Immigration Service could investigate the employer for fraud. So it's very important, if you have more than one employer willing to sponsor you, that they both have the intention to file a petition and hire you. Okay, so that shouldn't be done lightly. Okay, that shouldn't be done casually. All right, it's a serious business. Okay. Now, the second question is a very good question. It's about when the employee should discuss the job title for the H-1B job, whether they should discuss it before registering for the lottery or only when they are selected for the lottery. Well, it's very important to choose the job title early in the process and establish that the job is related to the applicant's education. That is very important, okay, because that's one of the top areas that the Trump administration is scrutinizing. They want to see that the job is closely related to the applicant's education, university degree, okay? So, and so before we register, okay, you should absolutely discuss the job title, the wage, okay, and all of the other relevant topics that will ensure that the H-1B will get approved when it is selected and filed, okay? When the H-1B, the applicant is selected in the lottery and when the H-1B is filed, because you can't do this analysis quickly, okay, after selection, okay? This is something you want to discuss with your employer ahead of time. And we have pricing models that include registration and preparation of the application up front and include the analysis that needs to be done at the beginning, okay? So don't wait, okay? Discuss these things early. And we have pricing plans that are valid for the entire process, registering for the lottery, as well as analyzing the case, determining the job title, drafting the petition, and that pricing is valid until the 15th of February. Okay. Now, another very good question here. For people who are graduating this year in May, can they register for the lottery? Yes, in fact, they should. Okay. When you register for the lottery, you will have to attest that you will be qualified for the H-1B and will file an H-1B petition if selected. Okay. All right. So if you are graduating in May and will have a degree that qualifies you for the H-1B visa, or you will have a master's degree that will qualify you for the H-1B cap, master's cap, when the petition is filed in April or May, possibly, okay, or June, there's going to be about a 90-day filing period, okay, then absolutely you can register for the lottery. All right. Another question here is a very timely question. Will the coronavirus affect my H-1B application? Well, no, not at all. The coronavirus will have no effect on the H-1B application process, okay? Now, however, if you are abroad, okay, and are in China or in an area that is affected by the coronavirus, when your H-1B is approved, hopefully, then you may have to wait to enter the United States. There currently is a 14-day waiting period before you can enter. Okay, so we'll have to see what the situation is like later this summer when the H-1B visa is approved and see what the issues are, if there's still a waiting period, etc. Okay, but the coronavirus should not affect the application at all. Okay. Now, another question here. My company has a law firm that they have been working with. Can I still hire and retain a GL Law Group for case review or assistance? Absolutely. We do this a lot. Often an employer will have their own lawyer who's preparing the H-1B case. Okay, but that employer represents the that lawyer represents the employer. Okay, and doesn't necessarily represent the interests of the employee. So we often will review the H-1B case, give suggestions, okay, discuss the various options and strengths and weaknesses of the case with the employee. All right, another question here is it possible that USCIS will suspend the online registration? All right, that is a possibility. We don't know what's going to happen. This is the first time that online registration is being used, and sometimes there are problems that occur, okay? We have a lot of YouTube videos explaining this, okay, and discussing these possibilities, okay? So it is important to plan for those possibilities, and please see our YouTube videos explaining those different situations. All right, here's the last question that I have here. Does my employer have to register online? Yes, absolutely. You cannot register for an employee, okay, cannot register for the lottery by themselves. Their employer has to register, often with the help of an attorney, okay? And then the employer has to confirm the registration of the employee. So that's absolutely essential. Okay, and the process is a new process. So and the employer can't actually register the employee until later this month. Okay, so we need to be ready for that. But the account can be created. Okay, so we can start doing that right away. All right. So those are our questions. I hope this is helpful. And let's see, and I appreciate having the chance to talk to you about the new H-1B process, okay? And we can follow up with you, and we hope to be helping you with the new process this season, and we wish you the best of luck.